All right, thank you, Anand, for joining us with those updates. Indian markets have fallen for the second consecutive session on the 1st of April, with Sensex falling 1,400 points and Nifty falling to 23,200 points. Global markets are also feeling the heat, with Dow Jones witnessing wild swings before ending 1% higher, and global markets also closing the worst quarter since 2022. Sensex breached the 85,000 mark in September 24 and since then has fallen to about 76,000 today. Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs are all set to be announced and implemented on the 2nd of April. So is the market collapse a correction which was looming for long, or are these jitters of the impending tariffs? Dr. Sharad Kohli, senior economist, is joining us live. Mithali Nikore, economist, is live with us. Dr. Jayjeet Bhattacharya, President, CDEPR, live with us. Dr. Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary, also joins us on the broadcast. Sharad Kohli, let me begin with you first. What do you make of the downwards spiral of the market once again today? What is this attributed to, according to you, Dr. Kohli?
Good afternoon, Uday. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists and NewsX viewers. I think the market tends to discount, the factors much before. That's one. And I think there is a definite uncertainty with regard to 2nd of April. It'll be, in fact, we need to witness one more day, which is tomorrow, where the markets would be in the sphere of uncertainty, because the announcement would come on the second evening, which means that our markets are going to probably discount that on the third morning. So we have another day left, but the markets are quite in a panicky mode. As far as the Indian markets are concerned, the exports which are likely to be impacted by the reciprocal tariff policy. I mean, if I name a few sectors, there could be automotive components, there could be seafood, there could be, leather and apparels, there could be textiles, there could be gems and jewelry, pharmaceuticals, so those are the items on top of the list where reciprocal tariffs may come into effect. However, having said that, I think the reactions to the market may be temporary, because India, at the end of the day, Uday, I'm very sure about this, that India would be a gainer, because the efforts being made by our ministers, Mr. Piyush Goyal and Minister of External Affairs, Mr. S. Jaishankar, in discussions with the US trade representatives, Brendan Lynch was here. There were 3 days of dialogue and discussions, item by item. So I think the willingness which India has shown to probably reduce the tariffs, this will help India in the long run. So we might see a few weeks of volatility here and there. But I think in the long term, and the long term is not very long term, Uday, by the way. I'm talking of probably a month and a half or 2 months, when things will settle down, the dust will settle down. Once the dust settles down, because US has to appreciate the fact that if it goes for a full-fledged reciprocal tariff policy, it's going to create a mayhem and chaos as far as the US economy is concerned, because the inflation is going to go out of control. And I think the common citizen of US is the one who's going to suffer. So I'm sure President Trump is going to realize, and I can bet that somewhere down in the corner of his mind is the fact that he will probably is using this as a tactic to arm twist, so that certain nations, they come on track, they start talking to him, they start reducing, they start appreciating the fact that US has been importing at very high tariffs. So I think this is a method to probably pressurize the world. 200 countries, regional territories and associations is what US is importing from. 200 is the total count. I added them up. And US cannot afford to, impose tariffs on all 200 territories, countries and regional associations and so, because US doesn't manufacture. If US was capable of manufacturing everything on which it wants to impose tariff, then I think the policy would have gone fine. But that's not the case, which means that US will have to bend down. A soft approach would have to be taken in very near future, Uday, because what will happen is, by my calculation as an economist, in 8 weeks' time, when these goods start landing one by one from other countries, when they get distributed and reach the counters or the shops or wherever are the retail outlets, I think people are going to be in a real trouble as far as inflation is concerned. And we should not forget that US has not been able to overcome inflation even till today. The Fed chairperson, Jerome Powell, has not reduced the interest rate. The interest rates in US are still at 4.25 and 4.5%, which is very high by US economy standards. So I think US cannot afford another wave of inflation, which has barely managed to overcome. And US should also remember that it is not growing at a fantastic pace. The growth rate is barely 1%. little more than here and there 1%. So it's on the brink of sinking into recession. This whole policy can bring US into recession. I'm sure this is counting on the minds of President Trump as well. So therefore, some soft paddling can be seen, in the days to come. But for now, stock markets are in an uncertain mode, which is why you saw what happened today, which is more than 300 points. Nifty was down more than 1300 points. Sensex was down across the board, selling. Only in the small cap index, we saw a little bit of moderate to a neutral trade. But rest, all the indices were down deeply in red today, Uday.